Hello and welcome to day 6 of the JavaScript challenge. And so today we're going to be doing reduce. So what the reduce function actually does is it takes an array and it runs a function on it, and it keeps storing the result in an accumulator. So for example, if we have this 1, 2, 3, 4, and we have this return accumulator plus cur thing function. So what this will happen is you're going to have some initial value. Let's just say we have a value of 0, so this is 0, and it's going to keep running this function on the accumulator plus the current value in the array, and it will store the value in the accumulator. So it'll be at 0, then it'll run, return, it'll be like this. Return accumulator equals accumulator plus whatever the current value is. So let's say that's 1, and then it'll do it again on the next value, the next value, the next value. So this will be plus 2, plus 3, plus 4. That's kind of how a reduce function works. It just runs a function on an accumulator and the array at the current index until you run through the whole array, and it stores it in the accumulator, and then finally at the end it will return your accumulator. Okay, and so in these examples, this accumulator plus cur, what this will do is with an input of 0, it'll just add every single number together. So you're going to get 10. And then in the second example, you start out with an initial number of 100. So in that case, accumulator will be 100, and then it will actually add every number to the number squared. So it'll do accumulator plus 1 squared, then it'll do accumulator plus 2 squared, 3 squared, 4 squared, and so on. So that's going to end up getting you 130. And in the last example, they just return 0. So it'll just keep returning 0, and then the accumulator will never change. Okay. And so let's actually think about how we could do this. So there is a built-in accumulator function, and we could use that if we wanted to. So this is the built-in array reduce, actually. They say don't use it, but I just wanted to show it. So here, it's actually, you say nums, whatever array you're using, then you say nums.reduce. Then you give it a function, and then the init parameter is optional. If you don't give it an init, it'll just have a 0 as the initial value. So if we run that, that works. Okay. So now let's think about how we could actually run this reduce ourselves, right? So let's actually comment that out. So one thing you could do that I haven't done much is you can use a for each loop. So let's just go over that real quick. And this is the syntax, nums.for each. So the way for each works is for each just loops through every single element in nums, and it will apply a function to it. And so the way the format is, it's a function that takes an element, and the element is going to be every single number or every single element in the array, and then it will return whatever you want. So it won't return whatever you want, but it'll do whatever you want. So here we can actually just say, okay, well, we have this function. Let's actually just run reduce like manually. And so what's that going to look like? Well, it's pretty straightforward. So we can just use init as our accumulator. So we can just say init equals run the function on init and element. And so this is like a, we built a reduce now. And then, so this for each will do this. It will go through the nums array. It will run the function on the init and the element. And then we'll store the result in init, much like what we have in the actual built-in reduce. So init will be our accumulator. Now we simply need to return reduce. So that should work if I wrote the syntax correctly. Let's see here. Oh, I don't need to return reduce. I need to return init. We don't have a reduce. Okay, so that works. So you could do this for each. Another way is we could use a for in loop, right? So we can say for let I in nums. And remember, as I showed in the last video, this I is actually the key in nums. It's not an actual number. But what you could do is you can say the same thing. So you could say init equals, or you can actually even just plus equal really if you wanted to, right? Because that's essentially what it does. But let's just say init equals, actually, I don't think you want to use plus equals. I think you want to actually run the function. So we're going to run the function on init, and we are going to run it on the nums I. And so you can do this because this is saying, like, let's take the object nums and this will actually be a key in I. But yet, remember, like I said, you have to be really careful. If you actually use the value I itself, it's actually a string. So you need to convert it to a number before you use that. But this will be fine because arrays are objects under the hood. So now we're essentially looping like this, and we can return init like that if we wanted to. So that would totally be fine. Okay, and that works. Now we can change this to a for of loop. Pretty similar. So now a for of loop goes through the values in nums. And so same thing, we can just pass an I. And then we can return init here. That's another way. Now we can finally do the standard for loop, right? Just a standard for loop through the array. So I equals 0, I is less than nums.length, I plus plus. Same exact thing. So init equals function init nums I. Okay. Return init. And so by the way, so I'm not really using brackets for these, because if you use a for loop or an if statement with that's only a one-liner, you don't need a bracket. So if you have more lines, then you need brackets. Okay, so that's what I'm using it there. So that works as well. Now finally, we can actually remember we can change this format from a function to an arrow function. And so we can do something like this. And then let's just do, so we can actually do, I think this should work. Let's just try it out, just to do a one-liner, and we'll actually use the built-in reduce here. So if we pass in this, then we just do nums.reduce on function and init. See what happens here. I think this should work, but not entirely sure. Yeah, and so basically what this is doing is we're writing an arrow function that takes in nums, function, and init, and is going to return. So you don't need to write return if it's a one-liner. It'll assume you're returning. And so return nums.reduce function on init. So that's what it's doing. So this is the same thing as writing this. But yeah. Okay. You could also, if you wanted to, write some stuff here and have multiple lines here. Like you can do some stuff here. You can return whatever you want here, but if you write a one-liner with, just wanted to show you guys that. If you write a one-liner with a return on the same line, then you don't need the return statement, and you also don't need the code in brackets. Okay, so that's going to be all for this one. Hopefully you liked it, and if you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next day of the JavaScript challenge tomorrow. Thanks for watching.